Hi, this is Gabe with HTP. I'm going to go over some TIG torches with you. You may have purchased a machine or you're looking to purchase a machine, and we're going to go ahead and set you up with the correct torch that will work for you. So I'm going to go over the positives of each type of torch and go over some issues with misuse of the torches and what can happen if we misuse them. Today we're kind of just going over some basic pros and cons in certain situations on the actual torch on what to use. So you have three different options. This is going to be your rigid, which means this is a solid head. It doesn't do anything. This is your typical TIG torch that everybody uses. You also have another option of going with a flex neck, which allows you to actually flex and manipulate the neck into different positions depending on how you're welding. We also have the flex lock or swivel head, which has this gate right here in the back, and you're actually able to manipulate the head without changing the torch itself. So there's different situations in which you're going to use all of these. Your good everyday, torch would be your rigid. They've been out forever. The pros on using flex head, typically I find these are great to use if I'm doing certain material that I'm going around. So tubing would be great to use. If I'm doing exhaust in a car, you can do it. The one thing that happens though is there is the amount of movement you can go fully extended right, fully extended left. So if you do exceed that, you will damage the torch head. We actually do send all these torch out with essentially a safety notice in it. CK does only recommend bending it to a 40-degree angle maximum. So 40 this way, or this way, or this way. So essentially what happens is if you overextend this guy, you can actually damage the torch head. We've seen issues where people would have bad gas coverage, stuff like that. So you don't want to fully extend it. So if you're out there welding, you don't want to weld like this. So I understand it looks cool, but this will end up costing you some money if you end up fully overextending the torch on. The other torch that we do have is our swivel head. The nice thing about this torch is this handle stays in the same position at all times. So does the neck, so it's almost like a rigid, but you're able to manipulate the way the torch is essentially pointed. So if I am doing, let's say I'm doing exhaust header where I need to get down into something, you can actually have it pointed 12 o'clock. You can also turn it to the side, and you can essentially manipulate it in whichever, your heart desires. The one thing with this particular one is with this swivel head, you also have this insert in here which needs to make contact with the torch. What happens is through heat cycles, stuff like that, naturally moving it back and forth, you can loosen this up, and what happens is essentially you increase the amount of resistance, and you will get arcing between the two of those and pretty much damage the torch. So typically what you want to do is before you start welding, or when you put it in its position, is you rotate it and then snug it down. I personally have this at home, and every time I go to weld, I just make sure that it's snug before I start welding so I don't have any issues. All right, this is our CK17 rigid neck torch. These are going to be all our parts for the actual torch. So you have your back cap, whatever tungsten we're going to run. In this case, we're running 1/16. Now, the tungsten number, so 1/16, has to match the actual collet. And you want it to match whatever lens you're using. So if you're using a gas lens, you want the hole size or the orifice to match. So it's going to be 1/16 here. So these two have to have the same number. In this case, we're going to be using our Edge kit. So we're going to have our Pyrex gas lens number 8 cup with our attachment, and then you have to make sure that you run the correct heat shield. So the way it goes is your heat shield goes on, lens goes on, add your adapter. Typically I would use my breath on this, put it on, but you know, things are different. So just put some sort of moisture in here so that these O-rings get in, because it's going to be a little tighter without. Get in there. Make sure that they're not twisted, which these are, but there we go. We're good. Collet in, tungsten through, and then snug down your back hack. Don't crank it down, because that'll cause excess pressure on the actual collet and cause damage. So you just want to give it a little snug, set your tungsten stick out, and you are ready to weld. As far as maintenance on your torch is, typically what I do if I'm taking the back cap off, depending on which torch you have, you want to inspect this O-ring back here and make sure there's no slits or anything in it, because essentially if you have some sort of cut in it, you can actually pull in oxygen from there and basically put contamination into your weld. So the things that you want to look for is, you know, basic torch maintenance is make sure this O-ring in the back is good, and make sure if you have a split collet like this one, if you look at that, you got 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and they're directly lined up. What happens from over tightening the back cap or heat over time, this will actually start to twist.